For the last 50 years, since joining the Congress movement and affiliating with the Freedom Charter, as I pointed out in my statement in November 2018, I am emphatically a non-racialist, and my record proves that. Of course, all sorts of stones will be thrown at me, but I suppose that's par for the course. As far as negativity towards African people is concerned, the evidence is completely to the contrary, both within SARS during my tenure and elsewhere, that this is a deflection from my role in state capture. Well, again, Chairperson, I must say that Mr. Moyane must come along and say that on the record in an affidavit before the Commission, and let all of those who have an interest in cross-examining him, because he's the implicated person here, have the opportunity to test his evidence, whatever that might mean, and we might or might not join the queue. Blowing the whistle, there's nothing to blow the whistle about.
I'm sorry,
the so-called unit has been repeatedly shown to be legal by various senior counsel at the bar in Johannesburg. Secondly, Mr. Pillai's pension issue has gone through all sorts of processes, including court processes currently, I believe. And there's nothing illegal that was done, and that's also proven for the record. Those who want to believe the contrary are welcome to do so, but the facts don't support them at this point in time. So I note what Mr. Mpofu has said. Let's get on to the next question.
Mr. Mpofu, I know you had not asked as yet what he has to say about this. You asked him whether he noted them, so to speak.
Yes, Chair, and you even repeated my question.
Yes.
Now we got a lecture.
Yes, but in any event, he was going to have to deal with the question of what he has to say. So
he will deal with it.
Okay, you may proceed. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you and I, you've agreed that. So effectively, you are saying you are denying that you are an arrogant, self-opinionated, jealous racist who is corrupt and has a tendency to hound whistleblowers who report on your unlawful activities. You deny that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Now, you and I have agreed, well, Mr. Moyane, unlike you, will back up these accusations with evidence, as you correctly say, when he testifies. And just to assist you, if you read Mr. Moyane's very first affidavit in December 2018, he, under oath, offered to give evidence.
2019, I think?
2018.
Oh, 2018.
That was after Mr. Gordhan's, yes. And repeatedly, even myself here on this podium, well, not this very podium, they have repeatedly said that he will gladly assist the Commission when required to do so. There's not even a need for a summons. He will come here willingly. So let's put that to bed. So you've agreed that it's important not to go around making serious accusations when you can't back them up. Correct?
No, there's enough evidence, both before, Chair, if I may respond. There's lots of evidence. I think one needs to read the intensive work done by Judge Nugent to know what the evidence is in respect of SARS. There's also lots of evidence in relation to the so-called complaint. And what was interesting, Chair, as I looked at
hang on, Mr. Gordhan. I think both of you have got something wrong. Mr. Mpofu, I think from previous answers, I think it's clear that Mr. Gordhan takes the view. He did say that you can't make serious allegations unless you have got facts.
Yes, that's all I was asking.
Yes, and
so what did I do?
So that from previous questions that's clear. But also, Mr. Gordhan, you were not answering the question that the question was more general, but you were seeking to answer the question in relation to Mr. Moyane. So I think Mr. Mpofu was just looking for an agreement on the general proposition. But I'm saying that I think you have already said before that nobody should make serious allegations against somebody unless they've got facts. Is that correct?
No, that is correct, Chair.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
if I may add, I mean, that was the purpose of the evidence that I presented before you in November 2018, and that is further reinforced, Chairperson, with respect, by the findings of the Nugent Commission.
Yes, but what I'm saying is his question was general and not relating to Mr. Moyane. So, but as I say, you had made it clear in response to earlier questions that you accept the proposition that one should not make serious allegations against somebody unless they've got facts. So I think we can move on, Mr. Mpofu.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I just don't understand what the Chair says I did wrong, because I started exactly, I said you and I have agreed that it is important not to go around making serious allegations when you can't back them up.
Oh, I thought you wanted him to answer again, whereas previously
No,
the
I'm
two
just
of you have
recapping
agreed.
because we're coming back from lunch
Yes,
now.
yes,
So,
okay.
to build up for my next question.
Okay, all right.
Yes,
That
okay.
is why, Chair, with respect, one sometimes doesn't know what Mr. Mpofu really wants an answer to, because he starts by saying Mr. Moyane is willing to give evidence and he ends somewhere else. So if he could crystallize his questions better, it will make it easier to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, let's do our best. Okay?
Yeah, no,
let's
thank
do
you.
our best. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Gordhan,
Okay.
for trying to teach me how to ask you questions. So the question was very simple, actually. You and I have agreed that it's important not to go around making serious allegations when you can't back them up. Yes? No?
As a general proposition, yes.
Thank you. And it's when you do so under oath, it is more than just not a good idea. It's also illegal because it could be a crime of perjury, correct?
I note what you say.
Do you agree or do you not agree? If
I'm
you,
not a lawyer, so I'm not going to agree or disagree. I note what you say.
you don't know the importance of taking the oath before God?
I affirmed right at the beginning of this proceedings, Chairperson. I'm not sure what Mr. Mpofu is pursuing here.
Okay. I'm saying that if you
I
go
took
around,
information. What else does Mr. Mpofu want?
I ask the questions here, Mr. Gordhan. You are just a witness, so just chill and wait for the question, okay? I'm saying to you, if you make statements that you cannot back up under oath, you might be exposing yourself to the crime of perjury. Yes or no?
As far as I'm concerned, there is enough evidence around, therefore there's no issue of perjury. Thank you.
Okay, I won't go back. I think the chair explained this to you many times.
Yes, it was a general proposition, but I think you can move on.
I will, Chair. I'll give up on that answer. But you do also agree that it's the height of arrogance to go around accusing people without evidence?
Chairperson, I need your guidance here. Are we here to engage in theory, or are we actually, I'm here to answer questions in respect of the evidence I presented before you in November 2018. Could I be guided by you, please?
Well, sometimes Mr. Gordhan, counsel will ask questions of a general nature in order to get an understanding of your own view of what is right and what is wrong and so on before coming to the evidence with regard to specific events. So sometimes some questions are of a general nature just to understand your own values, your own understanding of certain things in general without being specific. And then at a certain stage, he might then be specific to certain things. So when Mr. Mpofu asks questions, you just always bear in mind whether you understand it to require just to be a general question, or whether it is specific. And where you are not sure, feel free to say, can I get clarification on this question?
Or ask me to repeat the question.
Or ask him to repeat. But I think maybe just repeat the question, Mr. Mpofu.
Yes. Do you agree or do you not agree that it is the height of arrogance to go around accusing people of serious offenses without evidence?
That is for anybody.
For anybody, yes. For any person.
For anybody, not necessarily you, for anybody to do that. So it's a general proposition.
Well, if it's a general proposition, let's say yes for now until we know where it's going.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, maybe to assist you, Mr. Gordhan, you yourself were a victim of this. You remember that you were accused on some, what you called a fake intelligence report, and that caused you a lot of anguish. You remember that?
Oh, there's been so many fake ones, so one doesn't know which one you're referring to. But again, as a general proposition, as the chair says, I have been the subject of various forms of what you've described, so yes.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. It's wrong to do that without evidence. For someone to say Mr. Gordhan is a threat to national security or whatever, without any evidence, that is painful and wrong, correct?
Generally, yes, but it happens.
Thank you. Yeah, now, that's the point I want to make. And yet the proposition I want to put to you is that you have gone around accusing every public official who has ever made an adverse decision against you as a practitioner of state capture without a shred of evidence. Would you agree with that statement?
No.
Okay. You have no evidence that Mr. Moyane was part of state capture, do you?
As I said,
I'm sorry, Mr. Gordhan, I'm sorry to interrupt you. In the mode of the way Mr. Chaskalson was putting the questions to you, you have no personal evidence known to you that Mr. Moyane was part of state capture, apart from gossip?
Hang on, before he answers, before you answer, Mr. Gordhan, Mr. Mpofu, if you say it in the context of a particular formulation, you might wish to go to that page so that he can also have a look.
Yes, no, normal.
But if it's not important.
No, Chairperson, I'm not. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not quoting.
Okay.
Let me just repeat. In fairness to you, Mr. Gordhan, because of that exchange, I'll repeat the question. You have no evidence, direct or indirect, that Mr. Moyane was part of state capture.
no, I do.
You do? Good.
Yes.
Do you have evidence that President Zuma was part of state capture or corruption?
That's not a relevant matter here.
Answer the question. It's not for you to talk about relevance. Answer the question. You're just a witness. Do you have any evidence that... Do you have any... Listen, you have to answer the question. I can't be doing this. Otherwise, we're not going to finish today.
Hang on, Mr. Mpofu. Bearing in mind the scope of today's evidence, I'm not sure whether allegations about whether Mr. Zuma was part of state capture, whether it's part of what should be dealt with. Unless you,
yes, let me explain, Chair.
Persuade, you indicate why.
Well, according to the Gordhan theory on this state capture issue, Mr. Moyane, who was appointed by President Zuma, appointed him, among other things, to capture the national treasury. And he gave evidence in this commission about how Mr. Moyane was appointed by President Zuma. And obviously, and there are many passages, I'll refer you if you want, Chair, where the link is made between the alleged disrespect and all that, owing to the fact that Mr. Moyane had these connections in high places. So Mr. Moyane, in that analogy, is, let's call it one of the foot soldiers, but the kingpin is former President Zuma. So if the kingpin, if you have no evidence on the kingpin, then it's unlikely to have evidence on the foot soldiers. That's where I'm going with this. So it's relevant directly to Mr. Moyane. Do you have or do you not have that evidence?
I'm not sure. Mr. Chaskalson, do you have something to say, Ms. Leroux? Okay, let me just...
Chair, I do have a concern about this for a different reason, which is, I do think it goes quite a long way away from the terms of reference. And normally one might grant some latitude, but there's a very different concern here, which is Mr. Mpofu is actually inviting the witness to make a series of allegations against President Zuma or former President Zuma, who himself has been given no notice of that line of cross-examination. And I'm not sure that that's a process that we should... it's not just a question of latitude of cross-examination, it's also a fairness to a third party who wouldn't have been appraised of Rule 3.3 rights and the like.
Yes, okay. Ms. Leroux, okay, let me hear Ms. Leroux, but they should just sanitize before you...
Chair, I won't touch anything so we don't delay.
All right.
Chair, we do object to the expansion of the scope, not only because of the impact it has on Mr. Zuma's rights, but also because my learned friend, since the lunch adjournment, has mentioned things about the so-called rogue unit, about racism and arrogance and acrimony, about bias and hostility. These are all topics that you ruled that he did not have leave to cross-examine on. And so we do need to ensure that the questions actually cover the 5 questions that you gave leave on, which is whether Mr. Moyane, as SARS Commissioner, advanced state capture, and whether, when he laid criminal charges, he was advancing state capture. And otherwise, we're going to undo your 2 rulings. And that's the concern that I have.
Well, Mr. Mpofu?
Yes, Chairperson, yes. Look, I'm not going to go to war on this for Mr. Zuma.
Yes, okay.
But I'm saying the issue is directly connected. And by the way, just to go back to what the witness, when he denied the issue of hostility and said not really. He says in his statement at 127.4.
What page?
That's page 47. I hope we are using the same bundle.
What statement is this?
That's the statement you made to the Commission in 2018.
That's not the clarificatory affidavit, is it?
No, Chair. It's the original statement.
There's no 7.4.
127.4.
Is that the paragraph?
Yes.
Yeah, on what I've been given, there is no 127.4.
But, okay, let me read it out, Chair, just to save time. It says, Mr. Michael Hurley attempted to mediate the dispute on behalf of the former President Zuma. However, he, Mr. Zuma, appeared reluctant to personally intervene to end the hostility and lack of accountability from Mr. Moyane evident in our relationship. So this was but this is just one of the areas where there is a relationship made between Mr. Zuma's alleged inaction, so to speak. I think even the chair commented later as to was there any intervention from Mr. Zuma, and the witness said no.
Yes.
But
I prefer your attitude that you are not going to go to war on
no,
this one.
I won't, because otherwise we're just going to be way late again.
Let's move on,
Yeah.
Okay.
You have no evidence that Mr. Moyane was part of state corruption. You said you do have. What is that evidence?
You might want to look at the report of the commission chaired by Judge Nugent.
No. If I were you, I would stay away from the commission chaired by Judge Nugent. I'm saying before the commission...
You are not me, would you?
Yes, I'm not you, thank God. I'm saying that the commission of of Judge Nugent came in 2018, correct?
Yeah, I don't know the precise date, Chair.
Well, I can tell you, it was in May, June 2018. Before that, you did not think that Mr. Moyane, or actually the report came even later in October, November. Before that, you did not think Mr. Moyane was part of state capture?
Now, as I explained earlier, Chair, so we seem to be going around the block on the same questions, but let me answer that. I said earlier on that the real hostilities at the beginning I place at the door of Mr. Moyane. However, counsel was briefed in this regard. He is the one who initiated what I refer to as the letter from his attorneys demanding certain things of me, firstly. Secondly, post my appointment on the 13th or 14th of December 2015, back as the Minister of Finance, it is he who says that in respect of leave forms, he will submit them to the presidency. If he wanted time off, he will discuss it at the presidency. When asked for certain types of information, it would be not available. So there was, on the question of the operating model, which I referred to earlier on, I said, let's review it and let me understand it. He went ahead with the appointments. On the question of bonuses being paid, I said, hold it. I think it was a Friday. Let's discuss it again on Monday. He went ahead later that afternoon and instructed that those bonuses be paid. When he was challenged by the Auditor General, who passed away recently, on that particular question, he threatened to take the Auditor General to court. Now, those are clear elements of evidence of somebody who is basically a Director General and operates at that level within government, is basically saying, I am not going to respect your office, not me the person, the office. I am not going to cooperate with you on elementary matters such as leave. When Minister Nene was the Minister of Finance, his leave forms were submitted to the Ministry of Finance for approval. As soon as I was appointed, he said, no, I'll get my leave from the presidency. I report to the presidency.
Yes. Do you even remember what the question was?
Well, it doesn't rely, no, may I finish, please?
No, but you can't finish when you're not answering the question. Do you remember what the question was, with due respect, Mr. Gordhan?
You asked whether there's evidence.
No, that's not the question I was asking you. I knew you had forgotten the question. You're just rambling on. The question was, did you, before Mr. Nugent's report, did you think Mr. Moyane was part of state capture or not? It's got nothing to do with leave forms. Yes or no?
Okay, Mr. Gordhan, you wanted to say something while Mr. Mpofu was speaking.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, the answer is yes, evidence of refusing to account within the normal framework that government operates with by an individual who subsequently does whatever the Nugent Commission found, some of which I referred to, in relation to doing away with, destroying entities that were crucial to tax compliance, which in fact is directly related to whether poor people have hospitals, clinics or not at the end of the day. So that's my first point. The second point, Chair, that I was going to raise earlier on is, am I expected to return in kind the kind of comment Mr. Mpofu is now allowing himself to make about rambling on? I'm not rambling on. I'm very precise about what I am saying.
Precise?
But
Okay.
Hang on, Mr. Mpofu. Yes, continue, Mr. Gordhan.
So all I'm saying is, can you leave that for the theatre later? And can we stick to the questions which I'm ready to answer?
Okay, and can you stick to the answers?
Okay,
Honestly, do you remember the question, Mr. Gordhan?
You asked for examples or stroke evidence of state capture. I gave you one set of instances.
No.
If you want, go back to my initial evidence before the commission at paragraphs 9 onwards, where I make reference to state capture and where there are examples of the classic signs of state capture. And you'll find that there's a correlation between what happened at the Revenue Service and what the state capture concept attempts to capture.
Okay.
And that is get rid of good people.
Yes. Okay.
Destroy things that actually work.
Yeah.
Give, for example, VAT refunds.
Chairperson, honestly, you have to intervene now. This is not the question I've put. He's answering his own question.
Okay, Mr. Gordhan, let Mr. Mpofu say something about your answer, whether you remember what the question was.
Yes, Mr. Gordhan, you know, the effect of what you're doing is that we're not going to finish this evidence today, and we will have to come back because I'm going to ask you these questions. That is not, you answered that question. I will come back to it about evidence. The effect of you going on like you're going is that you forget what I asked. I'm asking the question for the third time. Before Judge Nugent's report, which was released in October, November 2018, did you believe Mr. Moyane was involved in state capture, yes or no?
The indications were certainly there.
Did you believe that Mr. Moyane was part of state capture before the Nugent report? It's a simple question, Mr. Gordhan, really. We can't have, you want the country to be watching this.
Yes, Mr. Gordhan?
Can I respond?
Yes, yes.
In my statement, at various stages, I'm trying to find the right reference.
The best.
I say at paragraph 14, on page 8, 14, and I quote, I must emphasize that my knowledge and my understanding of state capture, like that of the rest of the country, evolved over time. In other words, as one began to see certain activities... Yes,
hang on, Mr. Gordhan. The best way is to start by saying, yes, I believed that Mr. Moyane had participated in acts of state capture, if that's what you believed before the Judge Nugent report, or you start by saying, no, at that time I did not believe so. And then you might have been asked from when you started to believe that he had taken part in state capture. If you start the answer like that, it helps to make it clear what the answer is. And then if you need to clarify, then you can clarify in due course.
Thank you.
Thank you for your guidance.
Yes.
I actually said that in my own words. I said that I certainly picked up activities, and I gave examples of some, there are many others, which indicated that this was eventually what we call state capture of an institution known as the South African Revenue Service. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, but I think it's not clear yet because Mr. Mpofu's question seeks to determine the time when you might have formed that belief. Was it before Judge Nugent's report? Maybe before that you suspected, but it was not a belief. Maybe the belief came after, or maybe the belief was there before the Judge Nugent report. I think that's what he's very interested in.
Let me try to get the chronology right, Chairperson.
Yes, okay.
If you give me a minute.
Okay.
And because recollecting when exactly some of these things happen is going to be a bit difficult.
Yes, well,
but the notion of state capture, Chairperson, for example, at the funeral of the icon Ahmad Kathrada on the 29th of March 2017, I think South Africans began to realize in the memorial thereafter, where the concept of connecting the dots began to actually emerge. So, yes, I think the concept, the notion of state capture was beginning to gel prior to the Nugent report.
Yes, but you are talking in general, you're not talking about yourself. If you can't if you can't remember as from when you started believing that Mr. Moyane had pursued or was pursuing state capture at SARS, then you say, look, I can't remember from when. But if you do remember, you say it was from that time.
Well, that's what I attempted to do by looking at the chronology, Chair.
Yes,
So-
but I think what you read to me with regard to the funeral of Mr. Kathrada was more about what you think you say the people in South Africa began to believe, whereas the question is more about your belief.
No, that's why I refer to the memorial, Chair, of the late Ahmed Kathrada, which took place a day or two later at the Johannesburg City Hall, when I referred to the concept of connecting the dots. So that the picture of what we eventually call state capture was certainly gelling in my mind at that point in time. Whether I called it state capture, I don't know.
Yes, but the gelling, was it a belief at that stage, or was it something less than a belief? And number one. Number two, was it in relation, did it include a belief that Mr. Moyane was one of the people who were pursuing the state capture agenda? I think that's the important part that Mr. Mpofu is trying to establish, because I think he wants to know from when you began to believe that his client was engaged or had been engaged in acts of state capture.
Certainly the activities that I began to see from 2016 personally at SARS when I was Minister of Finance led me to believe that Mr. Moyane was engaging in activities that could be described as contributing to state capture.
Yes, okay, all right. Mr. Mpofu?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yes,
Thank you. I'm grateful to you, Chair.
Maybe I should say this. I take that, Mr. Gordhan, to mean that long before Judge Nugent's report, when you looked at those activities on the part of Mr. Moyane, you associated them with what you later understood to be state capture. Is that right?
No, Chair, that's
right.
not, no.
That's right, Chair.
It's
Okay, no, Chair, you're putting words in his mouth. He didn't say.
Just formulate it the way you
Yes.
understand it, yeah?
It's very simple, actually. This should not have taken 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So the answer that you're giving is that you became aware of Mr. Moyane's involvement in state capture around about 2016, and that's before the Nugent Commission. So the answer is yes.
Yes.
Thank
Okay,
you.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Now, so if that is the case, then your belief about Mr. Moyane's involvement in state capture cannot be sourced from the Nugent report, which came 2 years later. And the point I want to make is that and I want to come now to your favorite subject about leave forms and so on. All that, the fact that he was not asking you for leave and all that, in your mind, means that he was involved in state capture. Is that is that your evidence?
So as I understand it, Chair, Mr. Mpofu has asked two questions. The first is in relation to what I've just said about my knowledge and impressions prior to the Nugent Commission.
Yes.
And which the Nugent Commission's report, both the interim report in particular and the final report, amplified in detail about the kind of damage, as Justice Nugent described it, was done by Mr. Moyane, which he described as a calamity for SARS. So that's the first response in relation to, so what the Judge Nugent report did, it amplified and gave in a lot more detail what really happened at SARS, which I presume is the task that he was given. The second question is in relation to leave forms, etc. Those administrative matters are merely one set of examples of the defiance and the hostility and accountability that Mr. Moyane thought he had to the office of the Ministry of Finance.
Yes, thank you. What on earth has that got to do with state capture?
Oh, it has everything to do with it. Because
What?
part of, sorry, may I, have you finished your question?
No, sorry, I thought you had finished your answer. Yes, what has it got to do with state capture?
No, part of state capture is to take control of an institution, either at a board level or CEO level, so this is a CEO level. Secondly, is to protect yourself from any interrogation or transparency in relation to the kind of damage that is caused within the institution. So the refusal to discuss the operating model, the question of bonuses, all add up to that kind of refusal. And the third is to then go about repurposing an institution or parts of the institution. So generally, for example, in state-owned entities, the repurposing took place in two broad centers: procurement on the one hand, and the treasury function on the other hand. So from institution to institution, that might, the locus of the repurposing might change, but what is clear is that within that general picture, you had a commissioner at SARS who ensured that he owed no accountability and therefore didn't allow any transparency, and therefore he wouldn't allow any kind of interrogation or inquiry into what was really going on in the organization.
Yes, thank you.
Similar things applied to, for example, the FIC report, Chair, which the then Commissioner received in relation to Mr. Mkwakwa. In which that
Yes,
was,
okay. I think you have given enough examples to show your understanding. Mr. Mpofu?
Yes, well, you have given in more than enough, but you have not answered the question. You know, Mr. Gordhan, my professional assistant sometimes doesn't come to ask me for leave, and she takes leave without permission. And she tries to take control of her office. I'm asking you a question. That is just a question of maybe insubordination. What has all that got to do with state capture? Can you educate us? Let's assume Mr. Moyane used the wrong process of taking leave for a minute. What on earth? What does that got to do with state capture?
Okay, just Mr. Mpofu, just to make sure that Mr. Gordhan is not going to deal with matters that you are not having in mind. Are you talking about the leave forms?
Yes, okay,
Yeah,
let's do it bit by
be
bit. Let's start with the leave
specific.
forms. Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's better, Chair.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
So the question, Mr. Gordhan, is what does Mr. Moyane's refusal to give you leave forms or to refusal to fill in leave forms have to do with state capture? Just the leave forms.
that's what I elaborated on, Chair, earlier on. So to save us time, I won't repeat myself. That
Yes.
this is part of a pattern.
As I understood it, the part that certainly could relate to the leave forms is that you said, and I want you to confirm, that that refusal in relation to leave forms on his part was part of a refusal to account to you, which would be part of what people who want to engage in state capture would do. Is my understanding correct?
In this particular instance, Chair.
Yes, okay. Mr. Mpofu.
Yes.